Welcome back, everybody, to Dr. Sellers Educate. We're happy that you're back as we continue to support you on your journey towards achieving CNE success, or perhaps you are in the process of renewing your CNE designation. We talk about the term CNE, but remember that we use that term for general purposes. We support every nurse educator to achieve certification as CNE, CNE clinical, or CNE novice. If you have any questions about the eligibility criteria, we want you to head over to nln.org. That will be your primary source of truth as it relates to what is required in order for you to be eligible to sit for the CNE exams. Second housekeeping tip is to go ahead and print your study worksheet. You can find that link right here in the description of this episode. Every single time you review a snapshot with us or any program that you attend, we want you to print the study worksheet. The evidence tells us that we are at least 60% more likely to retain information whenever we have to write it down. So that is pen or pencil to paper. And if you're like me and take quite a bit of notes on your laptop, it has been determined by research that we are not as likely to retain that information. And I can tell you that I have had a firsthand experience of that being the case. So we want you to print out that study worksheet. We want you to write on it, starting with the date. Whatever date you're watching this episode, we want you to go ahead and write that date down so you can think about the content that you reviewed during this episode. And then most importantly, what are your gap areas? We want you to have an objective. What is it that you want to achieve in reviewing this episode? And then second of all, we want you to take some time really to reflect and to determine what your next steps are going to be at the end of this episode. Okay, so we want you to do a little bit of a mini individualized debrief as you think about what content you need to focus on. And then our resource. So we want you to go ahead and also pull out Billings and Halstead. That is the primary resource that we're using in this episode to make sure you are closing your knowledge gaps. All right, so those are the major housekeeping tips. We are continuing to focus on alphabet A through Z, exploring exam analysis, and we're really excited about our next series, focusing on the clinical evaluation tools and key strategies that we want to use to validate from a psychomotor and affective domain as it aligns with the specific Bloom's taxonomy. What are those evaluation tools, and how do we ensure that we are evaluating across the different levels of the taxonomy? So in this episode, we're going to cover Q, R, S, T, and U. Q is for question and exam. Difficulty. R is for reproducing exam questions. S is we secure the test environment. T is we want to consider the best strategies that we can help our learners manage their test anxiety. And then we want to understand the test alignment by using our exam blueprint. Building better test. The core concepts and foundational elements require us to be knowledgeable and competent regarding the strategies for success. Let's take a look at our thought-provoking question to get us started. So nursing faculty are responsible for implementing measures to maintain exam integrity. Which of the following steps are essential to maintaining exam security? 4 choices are A, avoid special seating arrangements, B, proctors staying in the same place during the exam, C, ensuring a variety of questions format, or D, require students to sign an honor pledge. All right, so you can think about which answer is going to be the best answer, and also consider the fact that there could be 2 good answers, but the question is which of the following steps are going to be essential. Okay, so you want to think about what is the best answer to the question. So let's take a look as we continue to explore Q through U. So Q is question the difficulty levels, thinking about the appropriate difficulty level for that specific student level. Okay, so when we have a level 1 student, we would expect, or semester 1 student, we would expect the level of difficulty to be different than our level 4 student. Now, we always want to ensure that we have different levels of difficulty as it relates to our exam questions and the level for Bloom's taxonomy. And we want to see scaffolding of learning that happens on every single exam. And what that means is, even for semester one, we're going to have some remembering questions, but we also want to have some application questions, some analysis questions, to ensure that students are closing the loops, connecting the dots, and have the knowledge and skills that are needed for them to master the content that we expect them to at every level in the program. And then we want to make sure we're aligning the questions with the learning objectives. That goes back to being able to ensure we've done a really good job of mapping. Reproducing test questions, we want to consider if the test is easy to read and follow. We know that grammatical errors can cause students to not answer questions correctly. So what do we need to do? First is to ask a peer to review the exam questions and to make sure that there are no edits that we need to make. And then second of all, if the exam questions have already been administered to a student group, taking a look and see what story did the exam analysis tell us, okay? And then spacing items evenly, making sure that we're numbering our items consecutively, and print on one side. So you may be wondering, well, this is new information to me. I haven't heard it before. So we want to go ahead and go to our primary source document, which is Billings and Halstead. Take a look on page 485. This is where you're going to find some additional context related to this content area. Box 25.3. So box 25.3 identifies some key strategies for maintaining test security and academic integrity. So there's a column on the left-hand side where it talks about 7 key elements you want to consider before administering the test. And then we have an additional 7 that we want to consider during the test. Okay, so if this is new information for you, I encourage you to take a look again. This is chapter 25, where there's a heavy focus on key best practices to develop and to utilize multiple choice and alternative format testing. And this is where you're going to find information on best practices to help you better understand what our guidelines should look like when we are developing evidence-based exams. And then the next component that we're focusing on is securing our test. So consider asking students to sign an honor pledge for every single exam. Now, we know that oftentimes students are signing off on their student handbook. They're attesting that they will comply with those specific requirements that are listed in the handbook. However, as you see on box 25.3 on page 485, that these are all listed as strategies that we should use to ensure that we are doing everything that we can possibly do to secure the exam and to protect the integrity of the exam as well. All right, so if you chose D, require students to sign an honor pledge, you are correct. Okay, so let's talk through the other options. Designating special seating arrangements helps minimize the opportunities for collaboration or cheating among students. So we want to, as much as we can, decrease the desire for that. And proctors should move around the room to observe suspicious behaviors, ensuring a variety of question formats do not directly contribute to maintaining exam integrity. All right, so just think about, if you need to pause this episode and go back, you can take a look at those 4 options, and hopefully this will provide some additional context for you to be able to clarify any muddy points you may have. Test anxiety management, encouraging students to visualize and to think about the mindfulness strategies to help them decrease anxiety and to focus on the questions that are on the exam. This is also test-taking strategies that we can use as we get ready to sit for our certification exams, okay? And then we want to take an active role in establishing a healthy collaborative student-faculty relationship. That's going to also decrease anxiety because our students are going to have more trust in their faculty when they have an effective collaborative relationship, okay? And then we want to do our part to make sure that the mapping is done accurately. Next is understanding alignment. When we talk about mapping, we know that there are specific components that we want to include. And most importantly, we want to make sure those test questions do have relevancy to the content that we are teaching our students about and the learning objectives that we expect them to accomplish in the evaluations that we are using in the classroom. Okay, and then we want to understand and really dig deep into the learning objective alignment and make sure that we're developing those clear questions that are relevant using reliable sources that we have already mapped back to the course content that we have introduced with our students. All right, so taking some time to reflect, this is going to be really important. I know this was a lot of information. We encourage you to spend at least 5 minutes reflecting on which content you are knowledgeable about, which content was new information for you, and any muddy point that you may have. You know, even if it was new information for you, it may or may not still be a muddy point. There can certainly be times where you may hear about content for the first time here on our channel, but it may make a whole lot of sense to you. So perhaps it's not a muddy point. But again, we focused on 5 different areas for this episode. So go ahead and write that down on your study worksheet. And until next time, we hope this information has been helpful. Make sure you tune into our website. That's where we have a lot of resources to help you close your knowledge gaps. You are not on this journey alone, and we are here to help you until you are successful. Reach out to us via email. And until next time, have a great one, everybody. Bye-bye.